Good evening and welcome to the interview of Superintendent candidate Reuben Duncan. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Appreciate it. The first question will be from myself. What did you learn about the Shrewsbury Public Schools today during your day in our district?
Well, I learned what I thought I was actually going to find out. I've done the research that I've done with the Shrewsbury School District online has pointed me in the direction of believing that this is a kind, caring place that's forward-thinking, has their children's best interest at heart and the community's best interest at heart, and wants to continue to move forward and improve things for all kids. Your goals of wanting to make sure that there's a sense of belonging for all kids and to make sure that everyone has the ability and the skills and knowledge to be able to succeed going forward is evident in all that I saw, especially at the elementary levels within the curriculum that they're doing, the processes. I was at the elementary schools a little more than some of the other schools. And also evident in the high school, when I spoke with the learners that are at the high school, had a great session with them, asking such carefully crafted questions. They care so deeply about their own education, about their school and the improvement of that school. They care so deeply about one another and that they are part of, and I believe they want to see even when they go further, that this school continues to be an inclusive environment that is accepting of all. That was very clear as I had spoken to those groups of individuals. It's when I talked earlier about it being evident at the elementary school, they're implementing new curriculums. I'm well aware of the curriculums that they're implementing, both from a social emotional standpoint as well as an academic standpoint. And what they are doing, first of all, simultaneously at the same time, and they do complement one another, is not an easy thing to do. Implementing anything new and to do it in a way that is systematic says that there's been some really good work that has been done here, and there's been good leadership on that, and your principals are doing a great job, your teachers are doing a great job. Your long-standing superintendent has done some good work that way and leading that effort, and everyone who's been involved. And I got to meet all those people today. And every single one of them points again to what I was hoping I was going to see, and that they're optimistic, forward-thinking, genuinely loving and compassionate individuals who want what is best and will do whatever they possibly can. You have a great school system.
Thank you.
And the next question, can you give us an example of how you would ensure that all students, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, and academic ability, have equitable access to educational services?
A crucial part of making certain that a school district in general has the capacity and capability of doing that also means first we need to make sure that everyone who is working with the learners has that type of mentality of what you're talking about. And so ensuring that it would, again, seem as though a lot of that work has been done, but to ensure, which is very different than hoping, ensuring that that takes place means that I would be going into and auditing all of the schools and what their practices are, what their data states, I know what your strategic plans are for the implementation of various programs. These are research-based best practice programs that are the right thing to do. But I also understand that implementation and the continuation of that implementation, we'll use the word fidelity, making sure it's done with fidelity, is crucial. And that any straying of that can lend itself toward not achieving its goals of doing what you just asked. All students, the idea of personalizing learning is is necessary. We need to be talking about that more. Again, that's not individualizing everything. We do have processes for that sort of thing for students who do need to have an individualized education plan, but the personalization of learning. And so what I believe you are wanting for this school district is for all of our kids to have access to achieving their full potential and for being able to thrive. And that might mean career and technical education options, early college options, perhaps making certain that if they are coming into school with less ability to read or engage in numeracy and so forth, that that they are found early, that the systems are in place early to be able to identify that, and then the proper research-based systems are put in place to help rectify that situation or those situations. And so that means auditing, asking questions, looking at the growth, talking to the principals, talking to the teachers. Be very clear if the systems are in place. The systems can't continue to function and flourish if there's not, and evolve as necessary, without having a more shared decision-making model. You do have a shared decision-making model to an extent. I'd want to take a look at to what extent that is, and see if we can see if there's any work that can be done in that way to make sure that we are pouring more into our staff so that they can pour more into each and every kid.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. So closing achievement gaps require deliberate data-driven, informed actions and focus on equitable outcomes. We are interested in understanding not just the strategies employed, but the measurable impact to those efforts. So my question is, what strategies you have implemented to address achievement gaps, and how have you measured their impact? Please give us some examples so that in that effort.
Sure. So there, looking at, if you were to look at your achievement data, you have overall high achievement data, and you likely have achievement gaps in subgroups. So you would look at the subgroups of where they are not performing relative to their peers in the same way. That there are often, that could be because of whether it be a socioeconomic status, sometimes it's learning disability status. Those are the two common areas. There may be some other areas as well. And so finding out where those are is relatively easy to find out. And so then being able to implement the strategies that are going to be beneficial to them to make sure that there is growth, that's then what needs to happen. So in the work that I've been doing through the course of the years, we were able to, when I was the principal of the school, it's easiest when you're the principal, you have access right then and there of implementing things. We were able to show in a couple of years over at the SAU 29 in Keene that we were able to narrow the gap during those state assessments between our student service population and our regular ed population. And that was done through a couple different processes. One, we did a middle school co-teaching model, which was the teachers were providing the professional development in order to be able to know what the strategies of co-teaching are, the best approaches. Also, it's nice to intervene, but and so the word intervention is important. So you're putting those interventions in place, but accelerating is also another good word to use. And so you change, you want to hold high standards for all individuals and to let them know that they can accomplish that. And so co-teaching is a way to help them realize that, give them the supports they need in order to improve and realize that they are capable, and then to keep on pushing in that direction. There are other research-based practices, like there was when I was started off in Jaffrey Ringe, we had, at that point they were talking, it was RTI, response to instruction or response to intervention, whichever model, they're similar. MTSS is now what is used for terminology, multi-tiered systems of support. And we, in the middle school, had used some reading programs that had been put into place during WIN times, What I Need, that a lot of schools do have, and we were able to see marked improvement in those areas. So as long as the resources are put into place, the time and the commitment is consistent, and you're every 2 weeks or so, after you do your universal screening of the areas, you find out where the needs are met, you set up the interventions that are taking place. 20 minutes is usually the intervention time that is going to be taking place at any level. And I'll tell you one more story afterwards that's very personal to myself and my work. And then to do that is, you only have so much time in a school day, but to focus on what's most important, get some success in that area, and then as you are able to exit out that area, you go into another area of need as well that you're going to be focusing on. You can focus on more than one area at a time. Sometimes it depends on the child. You have to be patient. In my current district, at the very beginning, maybe it was 9 years ago, maybe 8 to 9 years ago, we were starting to implement a competency-based, proficiency-based model, which is a model that is used for ensuring that all understand what the expectations are and that they can achieve it. And the reason for competency is to give them opportunities to learn and continue, not to accept just not doing something. So in the early stages of this, I said, I'm going to model this. There was a math class, I was a math instructor. They had a population of 15 individuals, 14 of them with IEPs. They wanted a teacher to take that. They didn't have any certified math teachers. I took that class and co-taught it with the assistant superintendent that I was with during the time, who was also head of student services. We did that because I wouldn't be able to guarantee myself there all the time. Did that for a year, and also, so I came in, it was early before the 8 o'clock start time. I came in at like 7 o'clock, we taught 45-minute class. I did a 20-minute, 3-day-a-week intervention mathematically with these 9th and 10th graders who had never had success, brought them to a level of finally learning how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and would do it with integers. Use some techniques that I learned from Dr. Mahesh Sharma that is within the state. And then by doing so, again, just an example of what can be done in those areas. And then we were able to actually not only get them to pass the state required Algebra 1 and do it in a legitimate way. One of them was able to go and accelerate herself. Actually, 3 of them were able to accelerate themselves because a couple of them were probably misplaced from an attract system, and were able to then go into geometry and Algebra 2 because I accelerated the math during that time frame. So that's personalizing the learning for them, and that's what needs to take place in the Tier 1 instruction as well as beyond.
Okay, back to the next question. Could you tell us about a time when data contradicted your initial assumptions about teaching and learning? And what actions did you take?
Yeah, I think, gosh, every year I look and say, wow, we've really progressed, and yet there's certain groups of individuals who still aren't proficient. And how is that the case? And we've done it all. We've put the curriculum in place. We've got beautiful documents. We have done the training. We understand that in our proficiency-based model, a 1 refers to this level of understanding, a 2 to this level of understanding. And we had it written out, and it's black and white so that everyone understands what the expectations are. Getting to a 4, really challenging. Like, it's hard to do. It's a concept of mastery is the idea. And so we had done some kind of looking at classes, assessments, how students did on a 1 to 4 assessment within our school versus the state assessment, which also has a proficiency model of 1 to 4 as well, trying to see if there could be some alignment. And in many places, we were able to find that alignment. And then you kind of say, all right, these students are achieving a 3. It appears that the evidence is showing that they're going to do well on an assessment, and then, lo and behold, they're functioning below that level. And then when you go in and do some observations, you realize, yeah, The teacher's doing what they're supposed to do. They've got some great lesson plans. The instructional practices are great, but the cognitive rigor isn't where it needs to be on a regular basis. And so if you want learners to achieve, if you want students to achieve at a high level, you have to understand, not only identify what level of complex reasoning they need to be able to do something at, but the instructors need to understand how to bring about that complex reasoning, and it needs to be on a regular basis. And as a result of expecting high levels of rigor, high levels of complex reasoning, and there are good taxonomy models out there, several and 3 very popular ones, that all of them are good, that the I lost my train of thought. I apologize. The cognitive level of rigor needs to be it needs to be consistent, and the instructor itself needs to have the support in order to be able to consistently bring that out, and the practices in the classroom need to consistently bring that out.
Thank you.
Next question.
Mhm.
In terms of technology, like iPads, you know how powerful a tool they can be for instruction and learning, but we also know that there's value in traditional non-technology-based instructional learning as well. Can you provide some examples of how you've found that balance of those approaches to ensure innovation strengthens but doesn't replace strong teaching practice?
So, yeah, you notice that you have iPads one-to-one in the district. Where I am at, we have one-to-one Chromebooks. We use Chrome. That's our choice. We have attempted in the past to, in middle school, we tried to, abolish, paper, pencil, books. We could do it all online. We didn't need to. It was going to be great. Not what the kids wanted to do, wasn't overly helpful, and they needed to have that hands-on, work. There's a balance that is necessary. So we got all the tools to be able. They can write it on there. It's just not the same. You do need to have that, and you need to be able to erase, and you need to be able to make mistakes and then come back to it, and so. And be able to be mobile and just take a piece of paper and talk to the person next to you and so forth, not to have clinky devices all the way. Now, there are reasons for technology. There are good tools that your school district has. I talked a little bit about that with some teachers today. Some schools use something like iExcel to help with math fluency, or to help them, or Khan Academy or something like that, where there's instructional videos and so forth to be able to learn some content. But like in the area, both reading and math in particular, and writing for certain. We'll give you an example. Math is an easy one because your brain learns from concrete to pictorial to abstract to then being able to apply. And so technology can give you the pictorial, although what your brain is really wanting to do is be able to picture it and image it in your head. That's the pictorial, or be able to draw it out here as well. But it skips the foundational element of learning mathematics. And so you need to have that hands-on, and you need to be able to not skip that step for the majority of learners. The same thing is true with reading. There are some great tools out there that can help, but it doesn't replace someone if you're teaching a child how to speak, especially someone who needs support, but someone who's also learning to read early years. Watching and mimicking and doing that serve and return is very important. So you don't want to replace the authenticity of the instructor and the knowledge that person has to adapt in real time to the individual that they're teaching as well. Writing, big benefits at the elementary level to be able to write and not use everything, the computer for everything. That said, they also need to balance that with being able to utilize the computer for everything, if need be, for whether it be assessments or for writing it so that they can refine and refine and refine. So much easier to do that nowadays because of technology than to do it on paper all the time. It's a balancing act. Mhm.
School districts are often faced with implementing state mandates with limited resources. What creative approaches have you utilized that resulted in increased student achievement and academic success?
So the clearest academic increased success with the implementation of programming with limited resources would be ongoing at our middle high school. And so achievement levels, I would like them to be higher than where they're at, but they are growing, and they're consistently growing based upon the continued professional development, the professional learning communities that we have, the greater access to data and then acting on that data. We also, in learning like kind of what are the nuances of our communities and what kids are coming in with and what they're not. So adjusting some of that, like for instance, you have chosen EL as a literacy tool over at the elementary to middle school, and that's a great program. Where I'm at, we use Wit and Wisdom, similar, one of the top 4 knowledge-based curriculums. So making sure that these kids have that access to that knowledge so that they can then apply that in the learning of these skills that you're looking is very important to have. So not everyone comes to the table at the same level, not an equal playing field. The high school, so it's kind of elementary to middle. At the high school level, we look at things from a financial standpoint, going, what do we want? We want our kids to have greater access. We want them to push themselves further. We want them to achieve. Since we're a competency-based system, it's okay for them to fail as long as they continue to come back, and we need to hold them accountable to coming back and learning. So why, for instance, do we need honors classes? Why not turn them to AP classes? So we're a small school, we have limited funds, we want to offer more, we want it to be attractive to our kids to be able to stay, especially if we go to a choice type of system within the state. And next year, we're adding 6 AP classes, not adding any staff whatsoever for that to take place. We've got great signups for them so far, and early registrations would suggest. We were given the Silver Award for AP for the first time. That's, it gives us a place to go, gold, platinum afterwards. But it talks about college and career readiness, that college preparedness. What are you doing? How many are taking it? How many are trying it? How many are achieving at specific levels? And with a school district that really, I would say historically, that was not a push. That's something that we're able to see continuous growth on. Our state assessment results continue to see growth, and as well as sometimes slow, but the curriculum work that we've put into place and the ensuring that all kids have the access and the supports that they need in order to be successful. We are seeing that our kids enjoy being at school, they want to be at school, their attendance is improving, their graduation rates have increased significantly. It used to be at like 85%, 83%, and now it's at 95%, 98%. A lot of metrics have gone up for the school system that we're in as a result of the work that we've done, and it has been at low to no cost. Partnership development is also important, but I can't tie that directly to increased results.
Next question I have is around budget process,
Mhm.
right? So you could walk us through like how you develop a budget that not only reflects the district's goals, but also ensures that the resources are aligned in the areas that matter the most to the district.
Certainly. The first thing that we end up doing I end up doing when I go into a budget is I have conversation with the school board or the school committee. We talk about what our goals are and what it is we're looking for. For instance, if there are specific untouchables, Class size is always a conversation because that is a place that different research talks differently in different circumstances and at different grade levels. So what is the preference or what does the school committee believe those class sizes should be, and making sure we adhere to that? That's going to be something that's important to consider. Where I'm at right now, grades K through 3, or K through 2 at least, 17 and below is what they're looking for. We've hit 18, we've hit 19 and 20, but we strive for that. If we've had to do that with some budget cuts, but we get very close. When you get to that 20 spot in kindergarten, for instance, that's a lot. There's a lot of grade levels in a kindergarten class, and so having 20 is a lot. But you get support in there another way. Same thing at the high school. What is it you're looking for? How many offerings do you want? What's the level of flexibility you need? So sometimes it's not about class size at the high school, although you might look at class size and say, I can't run a class of 5, or I can't run a class of 3, or something like that. So that needs to be looked at, all of that data. But you also would say, well, if we run this and offer this, we're able to accomplish something else, whatever that might be. Then it's worth it. So what's the cost? What is it worth it? Is there anything that we can do more efficiently? So obviously, if in my case we have a declining enrollment, has it declined enough in a specific area to warrant a reduction in staff? And if so, okay, that would be the case. Anything, the best way to go about doing it is to start fresh and say, what is it we need? Now, it's naive to say that we don't look at what's happened over the past 2, 3, 4 years prior to budgeting. You kind of know what you had in your budget before, and so people are like, oh, I think we need the same amount for field trips and so forth. But if you need to cut 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 under your budget, and you have developed partnerships with local organizations or even organizations that can help fund, you might be able to do some, budget less and be able to rely upon community for some of those things. And it's not a bad thing to rely upon community groups whose mission is to help you, giving them that opportunity to fulfill their goals. It's so important when I look at budgeting. There's a difference between budgeting what you know. This often is the case within student services. You kind of I know the placement, I have this many placements. Sometimes you build for contingencies. That's one way of doing it. That is a very traditional way of doing it. And that's not a bad way of doing it. Looking at that area, looking at other areas, seeing what the trends have been over years is really important to see what you might be able to do. And I'm not talking about trends in specifics about programming or anything. That's detailed stuff that obviously is also still related to budget. But for instance, I'll give you an example. We found that in my first 3 or 4 years at Jaffrey Range, that we were consistently running a surplus of $500,000 to upwards of $800,000 in the area of student services. For whatever reason, people come in, they leave, whatever, and they had been budgeting contingencies. And so we looked at what they were budgeting for contingencies. We started and said, all right, let's play it safe. No contingencies this year because it says that we're going to be to the good. And then lo and behold, the line continues and you've got to the good $300,000 to $500,000. You say, okay, we've got $300,000 to $500,000. Now we have some decisions to make. We have a fund that is going to take care of some special ed services of $500,000 or whatever like that. Is there some other way of, I wouldn't say, you don't want to take risk, bad risk or anything, but you know that a solid way to budget is by looking at your trends. And if you're consistently having a lot of money left over in a specific pocket, and it's never gone in the other direction, and the patterns of why that's happening haven't changed, they're going to continue to go on. And so you can look at the reductions in those areas too. It's a little less traditional. You got to, definitely have your math out there, and you got to look at it and be able to graph it and make it pictorial. But that's one avenue to take. As for a process, collaboratively developing it with the group. So I would never develop a budget by myself. The principals and that hopefully need to work collaboratively with their teachers to create a budget that's going to be accurate and necessary. They know their schools the best. That said, when we get together as an entire group, it is the elementary principals are going to be presenting to the secondary principals and vice versa, because they need to know what everyone is doing and to be able to say this helps us meet our district goal. We have a longitudinal type of approach that is going to be consistent from here to here to here to here. Why are you doing this? Well, it may be something good, whatever that might be, but it doesn't align with anything else that we're doing over here. We at least have to have the question and to be able to talk about that. So your goals do have to match what you're putting in for money. And then, of course, lots of process with the community as well. That budgets are very transparent processes.
It's a perfect segue to my question. So effective financial leadership requires the ability to communicate clearly on the physical information, actionable insights for the diverse stakeholders like communities, so that we can ensure trust and make the informed decisions. So how will you communicate complex financial information to school committee and the broader community? Provide some examples if possible.
Actually, there's a document that I'm presenting right now where it's just going out into the mail hopefully soon. Not just the voter's guide, but I do another one quarterly, and make sure, and a lot of the topics have to do with, in this round, have to do with the budget. The budget, this is what the budget means, this is what the default means, here's the percentages, and putting it in as easy terms as possible. So, thank goodness for AI tools. Once you write what you want to write, say, I want this written at a 6th grade level, it needs to be accessible, it goes to every home, everyone gets that in the mail, and they're able to, read that. Of course, then also making sure that that same information was sent to the newspaper so that they can, put that in, because some people see that. We then do another blitz in different areas on our social media. We have parent groups now. I could show you pretty easily right now. There's a ton of it out there right now, where a nonprofit group that we just I worked with to help form. What part of what their goal is to combat misinformation that is out there, and they just tackle it, and they work with us to get the snippets of information. They go to school board meetings, they pop it out there, and it's making a difference. And so the people who want to know the information, really, there's just no way of not getting it. Another thing that we do is we make sure, so all the documents, everything is accessible and we make sure that we also on the website, but also we have to push that out and let them know this is where you can find it if you're looking for it. We record all of our board meetings, and specifically we have presentations that have to do with this, like school parts of the budget. Those are then clipped out of there and put on the site so that people can go directly to that one without having to go through the entire board meeting. And sometimes those are even brought up in snippets so that we can share out little one-liners or two-liners, whatever that is. So that's the communication piece of it. As it pertains to making sure that the school committee understands, all of that helps as well, but we get the school committee involved. I believe our school committee, we call it the school board, would know very well what's in our budget and why it's in our budget. And then if they need more support, I'm working with them individually to help them understand, or Carrie, my business administrator, is coming in and we're helping. We spend time with individuals so that it's very clear that you have all your questions answered, preferably on an individual basis, and then of course as a group basis, because you need to make this all public. But everyone wants to be accurate when they are in front of other individuals, you don't want to have to go back and apologize and say, oh, that was not correct. Here's the accurate information. And so spending the time to do that is vital in a situation where you're talking big finances.
What is your vision for overcoming the need for an expansion of Shrewsbury High School simultaneous with the need for a Proposition 2.5 override?
Yeah. Yep. I've been looking at that. Again, this was a similar question to what I had in my screening interview, and the answer, in my opinion, is that it's twofold, actually. I think it's essential that if it hasn't been done so already, a very strong communication campaign needs to go out to the community about the needs and the realities of what is going on. That might even be inviting people in, tours, what have you, but definitely it can't be, and I wouldn't accept it if I were a taxpayer, just, oh, we just need more space. Like that doesn't make sense. I mean, I've looked at it and I've kind of mulled it over. I'm like, I know you just went through a schedule change. I mean, there are other ways to handle situations of increased size by staggering schedules, by working, there's a lot of things. It takes time to develop that. I did go through to your high school today and saw the crowding in certain areas. The school, I may not have been there all day long. It was only a snippet of time, so I couldn't see it all. But you can see the lunches. That's very, very clear that there's overcrowding. And then I've read the documents on the projection of that and all the other school needs that you have from a facility standpoint. I asked today about whether there was a concrete 5, 10 to 20 year kind of capital plan, really in spreadsheet form. It would be very helpful to have that. I don't have access to that, but that would be something that we should also consider developing sooner than later, because you have the information to do that. You had that architect come through. I read the report. It was lengthy and detailed, but it did have, if you skip them and go out to the end and see the poor fare and all that kind of stuff, there are some real needs within your other schools. So before we go down the rabbit hole of helping the high school with some space, you've got a goal of wellness for all individuals, and yet you have air quality needs that you need to have in some of the schools, not all of them. That's not saying you shouldn't do this other one. I understand why, from a state, having gone through state processes to get funding for building, they like the building processes. You want to get something that you're going to get funding for, and you don't want to give up that funding. So getting it is important, and doing it sooner than later. If you're going to do it, you want to do it sooner than later, because the costs are only going to rise. And so it is smart to do. But if you're going to do it, make sure that that's exactly what your priority is, and then you communicate that. And if the policies of the school district do not allow for it, I would be looking into entertaining, seeing how maybe working with an attorney, how we could develop some good policies in here to accept private funding for the school system that you want to build up. You have a community that cares deeply about its school. And I know that when we were going through a process with a CTE build that we didn't end up getting, but they were going to allow us to be able to get matching funds in any way, which way we wanted. We had to write the warrant article a certain way, but we were going to be able to ask for donations or ask if anyone wanted to have a piece of that building. We'd have to look at Massachusetts, state law, what is permitted and so forth. But the idea of saying, all right, well, if we're adding something in addition, like say we're adding science labs or whatever, is there a company out there that's maybe, a tech company or a STEM company that wants to donate funds for a room or for certain equipment or things like that? Show an honest effort to get funds in a different way. I think that's an important process to go through, and then through that process, you're also raising awareness. So that would be an avenue, and working with the community, of course, because in this town and in Massachusetts, which is different than what we would do in New Hampshire, you work hand in hand with the town as they're actually responsible for the building. So there's other competing interests too. And so there's a lot of work that would need to be done. And then also a lot of advocacy, especially for the Proposition 2.5 and the needs that we have. There's a lot of advocacy that needs to happen fiercely with the entire superintendent associations and other educators within the state of Massachusetts to start to pressure, if they haven't already started, pressure legislature in the state to be able to address some of these needs, because it's happening everywhere. You seem to be in a decent space for right now, comparatively speaking to several other places. And I know it's a significant issue in New Hampshire as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, how would you balance financial realities with maintaining education quality during a budget reduction? And give us an example of what you would reduce first.
So educational quality is it depends on the time frame you're talking about. If we were to, I think the conversation is, before you get to the point of needing to do major reductions, you have to look and have those conversations and some planning as to what is it that's going to, what does educational quality mean? And obviously assessment results, state assessment results are a piece of that. But there's been a lot of conversation with people today about the future of education and getting kids access to different types of programming and so forth. So there's already a need to, if it hasn't been started, there already is a need to be able to find other ways of providing education for especially your secondary individuals in ways that don't involve adding extra staff to the budget. You have to, what type of internships can you get? How can you award credits? Where else can they go? What other partnerships you have to have? Significant efforts in partnership development need to take place. You have a lot of resources in this area of a variety of resources, but they, and I bet people who really want to connect with the school in a meaningful way, but that has to be explored. And any type of partnerships that develop has to be a win-win situation. And so win-win doesn't mean equal, like the same exact thing. It just means that it has of equal importance to the other group. And so you have to find out and negotiate what those terms are in order to be able to provide access to education. Internships are the easiest ones to do. And if you can get more kids doing internships, then that lessens the burden where you're at. So that if you do have attrition, for instance, you can take a look at your staffing and say, all right, we have 5 people retiring. And they're in these specific areas. What are the class sizes? What are students getting credit for? And all this, is this something that we can that we need to rehire for, or do we not? You have to ask those questions anytime someone moves along. Is there a way to be able to do this with the capacity that we have already, or changing up schedules to a minor or whatever it is? That's important. What would I end up reducing first? I mean, I don't have any specific subject area that I would reduce first. Personnel make up 72% of your budget. It's personnel always make up 70 to 80% of any public school's budget. And so what I would say is that I would try to reduce the furthest away from the student first. There are other ways to get things done sometimes that you have to be creative about, but making sure that you're not taking away from the learners, that's the most important thing. And that takes a lot of conversation, because what does that mean? I think if there are clear areas where there's not interest in specific areas, that's an easy take. If there are areas that are really not saying, all right, what are our crucial goals for the district? Like we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to accomplish in this way, whatever that way that is. And there's some opportunities that perhaps we're offering that are, I wouldn't say in excess, because I don't really think that's necessarily something that exists, but because you want to enrich what your kids have, but is it necessary to accomplish the goals that you want? Those are the hard decisions that you have to have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In terms of your, your approach to communication, how do you ensure that staff, families, and community members with different viewpoints feel genuinely heard and respected? And could you share some strategies that you use to build the trust and how you navigate challenging and conflicting perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I haven't viewed how you do your school board meetings, your committee meetings. Often, we do have some time when there's comment time, and I'm allowed to respond and so forth. Because sometimes it's better just to not ask questions or just take comments, but also to make sure that misinformation is addressed in real time. Inevitably, there's always going to be different views. We just live in that world. It's good. You want to have that. We have to view disagreement as a way to have something to work through in order to move forward. And so that is how I would generally address any type of communication. Depending what level it's at, you handle it differently. In general, what I would end up doing as my own strategy is to find common ground. So you and I might have great differences politically or something like that, but we might agree on something. And if we can start on something that we agree on, we then can have a communication that is going to allow us to progress and to learn from someone else's viewpoint. I think in the area of in budget, in the area of policy or anything like that, we going into the conversation with an open mind and realizing that we serve our staff, our students, absolutely, but we also answer to the taxpayers. And so you need to take that information and the wisdom that people have from their own life experiences. And sometimes you can say, okay, let's take this from a different view, and you might make some changes. So being willing to change if necessary. And I think that encourage the disagreement, have a professional back and forth whenever possible. If it's not possible, we can do it at another time, invite them in. Always willing to have a one-on-one or small group conversation with someone to be able to listen truly to their viewpoint. I think I had a situation earlier today that I would have rather have had that conversation privately. And because sometimes it's not appropriate to have in a public setting. But listen, people, in my experience, want to feel like they've been heard. And they feel like they have been heard if they have been heard, not just giving them the time of day, saying, thanks, come on in, I won't listen. And so taking the time, face-to-face is always best. Can't always be that way, but do whatever we can and follow up with individuals.
What would be your number one priority during your first 6 months in this role?
It would be twofold. Threefold. Building relationships and the basis for trust and understanding amongst faculty and staff, because they are the ones doing the real work that has to be at the top of the list. Being present, how to do that, being present in schools, again, listening, talking, observing. And observing goes into that second part where really a good audit of where things are at. I can see online, I mean, you have so much online and I could just keep on going and going and going, but I might come to very different conclusions of what is actually meant. So I've learned to be careful not to just keep on going down there, because then assumptions are made and so forth. It's important to really ask questions, hear people's lived experiences, and take that into consideration as data in addition to what I see and what I hear. So you can look at hard data with tests and so forth, but there's a whole lot more that goes into the strengthening of the system. So that takes a lot of time and takes a lot of energy, but it's an absolute must, because it's not okay to go into any sort of major decision making without really having a grasp of what's going on. Plus, it will help us to be able to have better conversations as we do look to go forward when we have a common understanding of what's taking place. And then all of that is going to, at the same time, be going on during budget season, right? Budget season is like every day, all year long. It's never not budget season. Everything we do is related to the school budget, everything. And so that conversation has to be going on simultaneously all the time. For me, I'm going to have to do some learning. I will have to learn how to operate a little bit differently in a state that budgets differently. Now, the revenues, all of that process, that's all the same. But you call things differently, like Chapter 70 and circuit breaker and stuff like circuit breaker. We have different names for that, but the point is it's all very similar. The percentage is all very similar. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit different. I couldn't believe the funding. I always thought Massachusetts funds their schools in a different way. I couldn't believe the amount that is taken from property tax in your state. I was like, this is not much different. And that's a huge burden on a lot of individuals, and to see that keep on going, I understand why Proposition 2.5, 2.5 has gone through, because protecting your investments and your ability to continue to live in the state that you love. So those really understanding that and is going to be important. So it's a lot of understanding by doing, and being very present. Those are the main priorities. And if there's any windows of opportunities that come up, I'll never ever lose an opportunity to start a partnership if one emerges, or if there's anything. I always look for an in for anything like that, because you never know what is going to be able to come about as a result that you don't even imagine what that partnership can do. And I have plenty of stories of that. We don't need to talk about that now, unless you have a question specific to that. Yeah.
You've already answered my next question, so Rajesh, we can go to you.
Yeah, so imagine you need to evaluate. So, how would you drive cohesive teamwork when you are new to the district?
Can you repeat that again, sir?
How would you drive cohesive teamwork when you are new to the district?
I wouldn't drive teamwork, so I wouldn't use the word drive. I would foster it. I would bring about the nurturing of teamwork. My entire leadership philosophy and belief is based upon collective action. So where the majority of, it is typical anyway, is the majority of schools, sometimes businesses as well, but certainly schools, which are fairly actually traditional systems, operate with a hierarchy model. So you have someone at the top, and then they supervise, and they keep on going, and there's this decision-making process that kind of trickles down, like a game of telephone, and it can work well, and it can move an organization well if all the pieces are in the right places. And if you have longevity. You've had longevity. You're very fortunate. That is not the norm. And so, now, it's always good to have longevity regardless of what type of model you have, but if you can flatten that model, and you can operate from that type of flattened model, which is basically saying, we're going to distribute that, that decision-making, that power, that authority across the district. So to other individuals within the central office, although I would categorize them differently, the principals, the assistant principals, the teachers, and make sure that people are trained and know what it is they need to be able to do. But if you have a goal, if you have a streamline of where you're going, and as long as the central office is keeping that direction straight and is providing the resources for the ongoing improvements of the schools, making sure that everyone has what they need to do their job within those parameters, and if people are in agreement, then what can happen is a lot of creative decision-making can happen all the way along. And so that is not what I just said. May sound easy. There was a ton of work to be able to do that. But when that happens, and I've been able to witness this and experience this, your ability to make decisions and again, the idea of buy-in goes away because you're co-creating your future. And that's what you want, is you want a co-created future where you don't have to keep on waiting 2-3 years for, I think I'm going to get on board right now. It's, we have developed this together and we believe in this and we're going to make this happen. And when that happens, you're accepting ownership of it so that when something has to change, because inevitably something always has to change because of just society in general or finances or whatever, they can pivot quickly and it's not a huge burden. I mean, there is always some level of burden, but not a huge one.
This is a kind of,
And that's fostered by relationship building. Yeah.
This is a multi-question. How do you navigate situations in which a parent calls for changes that you believe may not align with the long-term interest of a district? How do you balance responsiveness with principled leadership? And after making a significant decision, how do you engage with criticism for that decision while maintaining trust, transparency, and forward momentum?
This question, are you talking about a single parent, a parent group, a group of individuals? Is there anything? Just,
It could be either. You could
Okay.
have, I would say
Just-
it could be a group that
we'll say a group.
feels
Okay.
one way. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, first, what I will say is I am very accustomed to dealing with conflict. And I have stated earlier today in another meeting, I'm uncompromisingly learner-focused. And I believe, from what I have researched, you are too. And so what has led me to believe that is the detail that has been put into place with your mission, your vision, your guiding values that you have, and in the three major categories, I'll say, of goals that you have for the district. That is the direction that you set forward. If someone wants something and it's not what is in the best interest of the school district, and it's likely not going to be in the stream of what you want to have done as written and decided upon, then it's really not that difficult a conversation. But I would be perfectly willing to have a conversation as to, why we're not going to go in that direction, and be able to provide whatever reasoning that would be necessary in order to make sure that happens. But just one reason in general, if it's not in the path, if you don't have, I'm gonna draw you a picture. Okay. I had this situation happen several times. And one of them was when we were making some curriculum changes, and I actually had some very prominent people within the community who had kids who came in during one of my coffee and conversations. They were the only individuals and threatened my job and a bunch of other things. And they said, you got to change things back. We're not, this is nothing about hurt their kids, but it was going to help other kids, and it was different than what they had experienced. I kept my job, by the way, and continued to go forward and do what was right for kids. That individual, I did have many conversations with. It didn't matter, but we at least had process. This is every system, every school district. And so if you're looking at that, this is not something I created. This is Senge is an author. He writes, The Fifth Discipline is a very popular book, writes on systems thinking. And so you have this direction that you want to go. And within your direction, you have all these other initiatives. These arrows could be schools, they could be departments, they could be things that you're implementing, what have you. The more kind of siloed you are, the more these arrows are all over the place. And the more collaborative you are, and the more you're focused on going in the same direction, your arrows are going to want to all, no matter how big or small the project, everything's going in the same direction. That's what you want. And when you have that happening, if there is something that is going to contradict that movement, you cannot do it. And you just have to be able to explain why. And honestly, if you know where you're going and you have the data that you're looking for, that you're saying this is what success means, it's not a hard conversation to have. It's an uncomfortable conversation at worst.
Thank you.
It's a good segue in terms of challenging community engagement around when you make challenging, controversial decisions, as in your experience as superintendent, whether that be budget cuts or program changes. How have you ensured the transparency and the two-way communication between the districts and the community in those situations?
Yeah, I can say from a budget standpoint, we are as transparent as we possibly can. We make sure that all our audits are online. Every ounce of everything is online. It's video. It's video that's put out there. Like what I told you before, we put out any type of information we possibly can in the simplest form, and we've had to do that. We've changed it every year, just trying to get it into smaller sound bites. Because let's be honest, we talk a different language in the education world, as every organization has their own, language, I guess you could say, in acronyms. We love acronyms in education. And so making it as clear as possible. And sometimes that means bringing people in to help us, because it's like we don't even realize what we're saying until they're like, what does that mean? What does that mean? We even do that at school board meetings. Someone will say, people will actually say, stop the acronyms, let us know what that is. And so we've been stopping and trying to, even in our presentation, spell it out as much as we possibly can. In the area of, and you wouldn't do anything different when making a major change. So there's first order change and there's second order change. Very rarely do school systems go through second order change because it can be painful. It's changing the culture of your school and changing the direction. You're changing the patterns of what you've had all along. First order change, implementing a curriculum, things of that nature. It can be painful, but you kind of, all right, it's reading. It's going to be, there's some nuances there, but there's not a whole system change. So I've been involved and had the opportunity. Yeah, we've done some second order change. It's very challenging. And so buy-in or co-creation is the best way to go. So, but getting parent buy-in and family buy-in, community buy-in is very challenging when that's the case, because it often means something so different. And it goes beyond transparency. Transparency is not enough in those types of situations. You can communicate all you want. by the way, I did that. I know that because I've made the error of being transparent and not teaching people and bringing them into the conversation. Once we started in big decisions, like for instance, you don't have to, it's not a necessary, that was the best thing for this specific community that I'm in right now because of its demographics and so forth. Changing from a 100, a 1-point scale to a 4-point scale, that's a huge change for anyone who has never experienced that before. There are very good reasons to do that, and it has to do with equity. And more of a guaranteed focus on learning outcomes. But try to explain that to people. It's, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. It wasn't until we started having forums and bringing in experts from the outside to come in and be able to answer questions and to be able to, that was when it all started to flow nicely. And so if I were ever going to do something of a significant nature, there would be a whole communication campaign developed before we would even initiate anything. Yeah, you'd have to. You don't want to deal with the pain of that. It's needless.
What is your plan to get to know the school committee? And how do you plan to build and maintain a transparent, cohesive, and strong working relationship with its members?
Well, this is a good start. So thank you for inviting me here tonight. And I've met a couple of you in another interview and had some light conversation. My desire in being part of this system is to ensure success. And so in order to do that, I have to have a better understanding also of what the community really values as success. You represent the community, and so whatever we have to do in order to either meet as one-on-one individuals, obviously we can talk about a wide array of things in open session as a group if we're all together. To be able to have those conversations and clarify, then we need to do that. I am open to any reasonable approach of making sure that we are on the same page, and that if anyone has questions, they're able to come and talk. Face to face is always best, but email, phone, whatever. I talk regularly to the board members that I'm with. I have 7. I've had upwards of 35 in the past. In my previous position before this one, I was the assistant superintendent of 6 small towns, and they each had 3 to 5. And then I had Keene on occasion. I had to deal with them, and they had a group of I don't know if it was 5 or 7 at this point. But then there was the SAU board, and that was all of them together. And so some I had more contact with than others, but people I was always approachable and reachable, and there were all different groups, because their communities all wanted something different.
All right. Can you describe a time when the school committee did not support your recommendation or a recommendation? What steps did you take to listen and communicate your perspective and still find common ground?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Most of the time, recommendations that I've had have been accepted. We did have an interesting situation this year, and it was in public session, and I was actually caught off guard because we had 5 years of discussions around a specific topic, and it was around the topic of open enrollment. And so while we may all differ in what we believe about that type of choice, and none of us felt that the way that the state of New Hampshire is doing it right now or trying to do it is necessarily the best thought out version, but it's definitely been coming for quite some time. It was very clear to see that was the case. And we were putting ourselves in a place to be able to, be okay at the very least in that new world. So part of that is that the New Hampshire Supreme Court this past year decided that they have had open enrollment in the law for quite some time, and there were like 2 schools in the state who had done it. Nothing really ever happened. They were allowed to not send any of their kids out, but they could accept kids. And so what ended up happening was they ended up getting students from another school and then charged that other school $16,000, $18,000 or whatever it was, and they're like, we're not going to pay. We didn't decide to do this. Just because your people over here, your school district over here said you want to be open enrollment doesn't mean that we have to. Law says, yep, you do. So that went through, everyone's like, whoa, this is different than anything that's ever happened before. And so I said we need to put a warrant article on the warrant for vote this year. And there's 2 reasons. One, understanding and educating people that open enrollment is going to come, it's going to happen, whether it's this year, and there's an active push to even make it happen super fast from the legislature right now. But if it doesn't, you need to protect yourself for a little bit. And we are in a position to be able to accept some people. That's perfectly fine. We talked about what those numbers were and all that. And also, I said, right now, because of how we are with wanting to be careful with our expenses, we want to keep things as predictable as possible. I said, you're going to want to, at this point in time, limit the number of people that are able to go out. 0 was my recommendation. But even if it was small, it would be fine. And that was something that we were all in agreement on. And then all of a sudden, one board meeting, we were up to that spot and they were going to take a vote. And they voted it quickly down. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we did this. This was not how it was. And so I said, with urgency, I said, can I just speak to this? And yes, so I was allowed to speak. I said, do you understand what just happened here? Because we didn't have a lot of discussion with this. I don't know what's changed, but this board has been going in this direction for a long time, and for some reason you've just switched and flip-flopped on this a little bit. And I did actually push a little bit with them. And I wasn't rude, but I had urgency. I said, and I just went through all the reasons again as to why we were doing this, what to expect and so forth. I said, is this something you really want to do? And then they actually re-voted and put it back in, and it's going on. It's on the agenda. Everything's fine. Everything's going to go on, whether people vote for it or not, I don't know. But the point of the matter is, I had that disagreement in public session with them, and certainly had some urgency, but I was not disrespectful. I just had to call them this is what we've been talking about. This is what we wanted. This is what we said we wanted, and we need to protect. You have to protect your district. I think part of the conversation was, well, other districts, you're stealing from other districts, and we just don't want to do that. And I said, I work for the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District. We have to protect the funds of the taxpayers in the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District, and I know that that's what you want to do too. And that was what flipped it over.
To follow that up, how would you have moved forward if they didn't re-vote and go along with your suggestion? How would you have moved forward with that type of a disagreement with the board?
Well, they have the right to make that decision. I think that to be honest with you, I would have had some conversations with the board chair and the vice chair, and asked them to consider looking at it again. We had some time. It wasn't, as dire, and lay it all out afterwards if needed to. And I would have tried again. to have that discussion, see if I could put a presentation on the agenda. Just said clearly, I would have gone about it this way. You know, we probably haven't had enough conversation about this. Maybe we weren't clear with how we were going about doing things. Maybe there needs to be some more education about this. I'd like to put some more education out. And in light of that new education or that other perspectives, you know, I'd like to at least have this a discussion to see if we want to go further in another direction. That's what I would actually say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Please describe your leadership style and how it has evolved over time.
Well, it's definitely in quick fashion gone from me to we. So, I mean, that's a summary. I've always been a servant leader. I would now define myself as more an authentic leader. So if you had studied authentic leadership, you know, servant leadership, but also other forms of leadership can come on in there as long as you stay true to yourself and your beliefs, your values, and the core values of the organization that you are working with. That being said, part of that being authentic is the realization that you can't do it alone and that the group is always smarter than the individual. And so power and control, I have no interest in that. I have interest in people's lives becoming better and the organization itself becoming better. And ultimately continue to be in a state of being able to innovate when I'm gone. So you want to leave the location that you are in a space where the ability to keep on going forward and continuing that process of change and innovation takes place. In order to do that, you have to empower a lot of people. And so in empowering, so my leadership would be empower others. You get far more forward momentum and movement by not doing it alone. And you do that through relationship building, through listening, through letting people take risk, letting people and groups take risk, and also you can, I think it was I used to say fail, but I've been thinking about it lately. Simon Sinek, you may have read his books on getting to why, and he said something on a podcast one time. He said, let's not say that failing is okay, but falling is okay. Let people fall. When we were kids, you jump, you do whatever, you try different things, take responsible risks, and you might get your knees cut or you might even break a bone or something. You can fall, but you know what? Get back up and build back stronger. And so let people fall and be there to support them so that we can move forward. And it's okay. Not only is it not okay, it's necessary. Yep.
What aspects of the district or the superintendent responsibilities do you expect will stretch your leadership the most, and how do you plan to grow in those areas?
Gosh, the job itself is a continuous stretch. Society has changed so much, even in the last 5 years, 10 years for certain. During the time of my superintendency, education is not the same, and it's just evolving faster and faster. Some of that has to do with technology, and some of it has to do with law, some of it has to do with finances, some of it has to do with politics in general. I suppose it all has to do with politics at some level. All of it has to do with people and navigating challenging situations. And so I think we can never fall asleep. You have to continue to expect that the challenges are going to be able to come, that you haven't seen everything. While I have experienced a lot in my time, 26 years, it's not the longest, but it's time. I've had the opportunity to experience a lot in a lot of different situations, a lot of neat situations, a lot of very challenging situations. And I've successfully navigated the majority of them. I would expect to be able to successfully navigate the rest of them, but only if I keep an open mind that I'm going to have to be flexible. And so while I'm a flexible individual, what am I going to have to be able to do? I'm going to have to continue to strengthen that. Again, it was a question earlier that someone asked me about, listening. Like, I'm a decent listener. I'm a good communicator. I like connecting with people, and I genuinely care. You can always be better. And always wanting to be better is going to be the difference between sometimes success and a lot of hassle. So I do think that. I think that every one of us is going to have to be willing, and this goes along with flexibility, but be willing to rethink about funding. I think we're going to have to. I've looked at the concepts of where you're at with the 4.25 to the 4.75 and the 4.5. Those are all reasonable increases, but there's the reality of some challenges that might be coming up in the next couple of years. We're going to have to be creatively brainstorming what we're going to do in order to be able to make that all work. And I don't think one person has the answer. But the answers are there. That I'm relatively certain of.
Speaking of challenges, with all that you've learned about Shrewsbury Public Schools throughout your time here, what do you see as the district's greatest challenge and opportunity?
Well, your opportunity is off the charts. So there's no ceiling to that. What can prevent that from taking place is our inefficient structures. And what I mean by that is any type of leadership structure that is going to not empower other individuals to really take ownership of the next steps of the organization and of their own classrooms, for that matter, or whatever their job is. What was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
So just what you see as the district's greatest challenge?
Greatest challenge? I think the obvious one is sustaining, what you're doing from a financial standpoint. That's not anything you've done. I've read the reports about your spending. You have a great per pupil, relatively speaking, to other schools. You have a great per pupil cost. You obviously have high achievement as a result of that as one measure, but that's, those two together, it's exactly where you want to be. You shouldn't be at all in a spot of being concerned. Nonetheless, the reality is there because of the structures that exist. So that's going to be a challenge, and we're going to have to find some creative ways while also trying to be active with the legislature. We're going to have to be, because that's the easiest way to at least alleviate some of the challenges sooner than later. But the reason why I'm here right now is because I believed through your posting and through what I had read about you and the language that was used within your postings, I believed that you wanted something more, and by that I mean in that you're the real deal, right? So like what you put out there about yourself is who you are. You're not fake about that. And when I came here, I'll explain what I mean by that. When I came here, every interaction I had, now you might have a bunch of great actors. There were some. We went through the people who are on stage. I don't think so. These people were genuine. They were authentic. They are living testimony to the language that you're using and how you are promoting yourself. That tells me you have relative to other public schools, you've achieved a significant amount. Let's pull them aside. Let's just get rid of all the rest of them. You have the foundation already set. There's been great things happening here to really project yourselves into a higher a higher level on so many levels. We have to define what those levels need to look like, but
Thanks.
What do you anticipate will be your biggest area of learning as you step into the superintendent role here in Shrewsbury?
I do think that the newness of being, the collaboration is not a problem. I had a good meeting with the town manager, but the interactions and understanding all the details around the town's responsibility, school's responsibility, and all that, that is different. Where when I collaborate with my town manager, we're dealing with separate votes, separate buckets. It's all the same money from the town, so it's actually, this is, to me, it's a dream to be able to actually be able to, like, and have to work collaboratively with the town like this and say, let's figure this out. That is so much better than noticeably being in opposition to each other's budgets. And so finding ways where you have to join, I think that's going to be a learning curve, but I think that's going to be a learning curve in general, even with getting the terminology down and everything like that for years to come, because you're constantly going to be dealing with a changing town and community and school needs. So it's always going to be the relationship building is going to have to be huge. We're going to have to be able to really have a solid relationship. That I'm not concerned about. The other area of learning is, I think, more upfront. When working with an organization, especially one that I don't have a lot of understanding of completely. I understand what's happening, what you're doing. There's a lot of patterns that are very good. You want to build upon the strengths of an organization, not focus on the weaknesses. When you build upon the strengths of an organization, the weaknesses don't get the attention and they go by the wayside by and large, and then you can cut some things off that remain. And so my learning curve has to be about what is the core of this school district, where's everything emanating from. And when you have that, then we take a look at the next layer of strengths and continue to be able to map out how to build on those. That takes a little bit of time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last question.
Oh, wait. 1 minute.
Why are you the right leader for Shrewsbury Public Schools at this time?
Yeah, I'm the right leader because I have a breadth of experience and a depth of experience that has prepared me for this specific district. I say this specific district because, and I'll get to the breadth and depth in a second, but I have already answered the why earlier, but I'll say it again in maybe a different way. I am looking for being part of something that can grow in ways that I have not been able to see grow, and you have the system because of really smart decisions and longevity from before, and there's been a lot of people doing a lot of good things. You're ripe for being able to help lead a district to another level. It's not a rebuild. It's not starting from scratch. It's not tearing something down and rebuilding, things like that. You've got something special here, and let's grow it. That excites me. That's why I'm in this type of role. I want people to succeed. And of course, first and foremost, I want our kids. You have a wonderful group of kids. They were fantastic. It's helpful in a school district this size. This is larger than any other district that I've been. It's certainly larger than the one I'm in right now. It's comparable to Keene and the surrounding districts when you put them all together. That was about 1,000 kids less, but had its own extra bonuses because of the region that it was in and the political structures. But I have experience in leading a whole district. leading communities that are politically divided, leading communities and making progress, by the way, at the exact same time and sticking to it and through it in all areas of where I've been. I've been successful in every single area, and those areas are at all of your grade levels. So from birth all the way through grade 12 here, and actually even in some college areas, so post that, I've had experience. I understand the complete spectrum. Doesn't mean that, it's not something that I can continue to, I have to keep on learning, and things are changing all over the place, but I can relate to every single individual in this area and in this school. It makes it so that I have some credibility, and also helps me be able to relate so that I can build the relationships necessary for the school district to move forward.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Really appreciate it. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second?
All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good night.